Good morning, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to the start of Jane Austen July. Isn't it all so very exciting? So I love Jane Austen July. It's one of the best events in the BookTube calendar. It's hosted this year by Katy from Books and Things, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish. I always find that one a bit of a tongue twister to say, and Claudia from Spinster's Library. And it's the one event that's really guaranteed to have me reading something, even if I wasn't on BookTube at all anymore and I wasn't posting any videos, I would still be participating in Jane Austen July, because over the last few years, July has just become synonymous with rereading Jane Austen books in my mind. So in this video, I thought I'd just do a little refresh of the books I'm planning to read for Jane Austen July. I did mention some of these in a tag that I did with Roz from Scallydandling about the book a couple of weeks ago, but some of those ideas have changed or become more fixed, so I'm going to go over that again. And I'm also going to talk to you about a book that I finished. I finished a book. This is crazy. I've had a week of annual leave, and I've managed to finish one book. So this is Blood and Beauty by Sarah Dunant. It's from about 2012, and it's a historical fiction novel. All the tongue twisters this morning. It's a historical fiction novel set in around the 1490s in Italy, surrounding Pope Alexander the. No matter how many times I read it in this book, I still can't remember whether it's 4th or 6th. Basically, a pope that came to power at that time and his family. A friend of mine gave it to me, and I read it because it compares itself to Hilary Mantel multiple times on the cover, and I love Hilary Mantel, or I love the Wolf Hall books about Thomas Cromwell, at least. I wouldn't really recommend this. It's too long, but it's also too short. She tries to cover way too many things. She covers maybe not several decades, but at least 8 years of material, and goes into the points of view of maybe about 20 odd characters, which I don't mind in itself. She has quite a good ability to slot into the mind spaces of different characters, but the problem is it's good when she's using the minds of those characters to explore the same continuous story, but the problem here is that she is trying to explore all the different stories that related to the Borgias, and she should have just left a few of them out to make it more readable and more engaging, and spend more time actually with the interesting storylines, because I'd be enjoying a storyline and then she'd just skip forward 3 months and it would just end. I also felt like she spent way too much time showing off her research and saying, oh, this ambassador would then write in his letter, and it's I know you've read the letter, that's great, but a good historical fiction writer should be able to incorporate those references to their research without it sounding so shoehorned in. I wouldn't strongly recommend it. If you like historical fiction, you'll probably enjoy this. I'm particularly annoyed because it turns out it's got a sequel, or it says at the back that she's going to write a sequel for it. The story isn't over, so it just kind of ended. It was a bit unsatisfying. I thought something dramatic was going to happen before the end, but it just kind of, finished. So yes, that was the book that I finished this month. A little bit disappointed. I guess I'm doubly annoyed because I chose this book because I wanted a light and easy read, because I know I'm not reading many books recently, I know I'm not finishing many books recently, so I thought I'll pick something that will be a quick and easy read, and it wasn't quick. I guess it was easy, but I just didn't really fancy it very much, so it dragged a bit. There was something else I was going to say about it, but I can't remember what it was, and you're here for Jane Austen July, so let's just skip to that. So there are 6 prompts for Jane Austen July. The first thing you have to do to participate is to read a book by Jane Austen, and I am, after much deliberation, I'm going to reread Mansfield Park, which is really one of my favourites. I love it so much because it has grown on me so much over the years. So I have a stronger relationship with it because we've gone through a period at the beginning where we were I'm not really sure we're going to get along well. But the more I read this, the more I love it, and the more that I see the depth and richness in it. So I'm going to read this one as an audiobook. I've got one read by Frances Barrow, I think. I started it this morning, and she's got a really irritating voice for Mrs. Norris. But I can't really argue about that because Mrs. Norris is really irritating, so it's kind of she's just given her the voice to add to the character. I think I'm going to enjoy revisiting this. I'm doing it as an audiobook because I just thought it might be kind of like relaxing, and I can just play it in the background while I'm doing some chores, and it's a way of bringing a bit more Jane Austen July into my day when I don't necessarily have the time to sit down and read, but you know, when I'm just doing the washing up or whatever. So that is the main Jane Austen book I'm going to read, and that is the one that the group are doing as a read along. So I've tried to join the Goodreads group. I don't know whether or not I've succeeded. I feel like I've tried in previous years, and I somehow, like, I join the group but I don't necessarily see the discussions. I'm not very good at Goodreads, so yeah, I'm going to try and be part of those discussions. But yeah, I think it was going to be good. The next one is Persuasion. If I finish this in plenty of time, and if I want to, then I might join in on Persuasion as well, because again, I also love Persuasion. The other one I was thinking of doing is a bit of a personal challenge to myself, is to get an audiobook of Pride and Prejudice in Spanish, because I know Pride and Prejudice nearly word for word, so I feel like even if I struggle with the Spanish language, I should be able to follow the gist of it, and I need to do more Spanish practice. So, and it's available on Netflix for like 46p or something. So yeah, I might give that a go later on. The only reason I didn't is because I listened to the sample and it was insanely fast, like really, really, really fast speech. But then my husband pointed out to me that it's set to the speed that you normally play at, so it was set on like 2 times speed, which I shouldn't feel too bad that I can't understand a foreign language when it's at double speed like that. That's probably okay. Anyway, rambling time. The next part of the challenge is to read something written by Jane Austen that is not one of her 6 major works. So I was thinking of reading a play that Jane Austen wrote that was a condensed version of Sir Charles Grandison, which was a book in 7 volumes by Samuel Richardson. But in order for that to work, I need to read Sir Charles Grandison for it to make sense, and I know myself, I'm not going to read a 7-volume book this July. So I'm going to go for a slightly easier option. This is Jane Austen's Letters, edited by Dierdre Faye. I started this last year. I think I read 15 letters. I read 15 letters last year. I really enjoyed them. Quite often you only get about half the story, or you get like a little sample, but you get a lot of examples of wit and relationships between the sisters, and just, yeah, little special instances like that. I think it's a real privilege that we have these letters and we have the ability to see them. And because they cover such a huge date range, you can say, well, this is how she was thinking and feeling when she was starting writing this book. This is how she was thinking and feeling when she was finishing writing this book. You can kind of see the context to her works, and context is the thing that I like. Going on with the prompts, I'm less sure about what order they're supposed to be in, but I'm sure I remember all of them. So the next one that I'm going to mention is read a retelling of a Jane Austen book, or a book that's kind of like set in the world of Jane Austen, so either follows a different character perhaps, or transplants the story into the modern era. And I'm going to read The Heiress by Molly Greeley, which is about Miss Anne de Bourgh, and I think it's going to be good fun. I quite enjoy this prompt. It's kind of like fan fiction, but for some reason Jane Austen fan fictions don't have any trouble getting published and getting a wide readership. It's because we all love Jane Austen so much. So if I have time, I'll probably throw in a few more of these. They tend to be typically fairly light reads, which is what I need at the moment. I've heard a couple of people mention one called, I think it's called Where the Rhythm Takes You, which is a persuasion retelling set in Tobago. I think that Claudia's reading that. So if I can find that, and if I finish the Heiress in plenty of time, then I might try that one as well, because I love Persuasion, and if I do manage to read Persuasion, it would be cool to have to look at the adaptation version. I don't know are there many fan fictions written based on Mansfield Park? They always seem to be Pride and Prejudice. So if anybody knows a written adaptation based on Mansfield Park, I would be interested to read it. Then the next one is to read a book by a Jane Austen contemporary, and I love this prompt. This is one of my favourite prompts because it's a bit like Victober, like you get to immerse into more of the Regency writing world, and sometimes by comparing Jane Austen with her contemporaries, it really shows how much of a step forward that she made, but also makes that progress more relatable, and we can understand like where she came from and how she did it. So I'm going to read Belinda by Maria Edgeworth. This is published by Pandora, and it's part of their Mothers of the Novel series. And I'm fairly sure I read Self-Control by Mary Brunton from this same series. Let me just see if I can find, I'm sure there's a list of the books. Yeah, so they think the mothers of the novel were Eliza Haywood, Charlotte Lennox, Mary Hayes, Mrs. Opie, Maria Edgeworth, Lady Morgan, Mary Brunton, which is the one that I've read, and Maria Edgeworth has got 2 books in this list. Previously, I've read Castle Rackrent by Maria Edgeworth. It's a very, very short book. I think it's set in Ireland. I think she was Irish, and it's quite chaotic. It's either Ireland or Scotland. It's really bad that I can't remember that. It was like good 5 or 6 years since I read it. And it was very raucous and a bit wild, and more of like interconnected short stories almost than having a consistent plot. But I'm hoping that Belinda will be more of a typical novel. So it's the story of Belinda and the 2 men who caught her. So it's going to be a Regency love triangle, and it just came out just before Jane Austen's books. And I believe Jane Austen is likely to have read them. I'm going to be seeing if I can do some research to find out whether they read each other's work, and if so, what they thought of each other, because that is always interesting. What I find with these books, like Self-Control, I read it really fast and I really actually loved it. But if you read them again and again, like Mysteries of Udolpho, the second time I read it, it just kind of fell apart. So they're not as good as Jane Austen in that they just don't have that resilience to being reread. They don't give any more, if that makes sense. I'm going to try and read a couple of other things for this prompt as well. So one thing that I'm doing every day at the moment that I am successfully doing, it's the only thing that I'm successfully reading on a consistent basis, is reading a poem every day. This last month I've been reading John Donne. I haven't finished my John Donne book of poems, but I am ready for a break, let's say. Yeah, some things about his attitude and the things that he chooses to repeatedly dwell on, it's just got a little bit samey because I'm still in the overly romantic poetry, and yeah, I'm not enjoying it as much as I could be, so I'm going to switch to one of Jane Austen's favourite poets. Oh, I've got the Kindle set up on the Heiress still, which is William Cowper, and I think my mum is going to be reading this too, Ros. Trying to give you the cover there. So this is just selected poems, I think, by William Cowper. I might try and get hold of a paper copy of this, just because I want to be able to leave it lying around, and if I'm reading the Heiress, then it'll be annoying, because, yeah. So, yeah, I might try and get hold of a paper copy of some short poems by Cowper. But Jane Austen loved William Cowper, and she quoted him in many of her works, notably in Mansfield Park. I think he was the one who wrote about like groves of trees, and Fanny talked about that when she was like saying that she was sad about the plans to change the landscape at Sotherton. So yeah, those are 2 things by contemporaries that I'm planning to read. The last one is a play. So every month Ros and I do a discussing drama video where we read a play and then we talk about it, and we always often try to fit that play in with any read-along that's going on at that time. So this month we're going to read a play by Sheridan, and Sheridan was a fan of Jane Austen. He apparently liked Pride and Prejudice, and Jane Austen has actually acted in the play that we're going to read, A School for Scandal, and she also mentioned it as one of the plays that was considered and discarded in Mansfield Park. So there's a lot of little links joining Sheridan to Jane Austen, so making that a perfect read for this month. So that's what we're going to do. Last year we read Lover's Vows by Mrs. Inchbald. I know a couple of people are talking about reading that one this year. It was good, it was interesting. I'm interested to read Mansfield Park having read it. I think it will add to my understanding and appreciation of Mansfield Park and some of the things that she's hinting to and implying with the scenes in Mansfield Park, I suppose. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to rereading Mansfield Park in the light of that. And yeah, I would recommend it if you want to know a bit more about Mansfield Park. It won't take you long to read, but it will add something. It's not maybe a good play otherwise, but yeah, because it's been immortalised by Jane Austen, that makes it a good thing. The final prompt is to read a piece of non-fiction about Jane Austen or her time, and I showed this one before, Critics on Jane Austen. This is like a 1970s book that used to belong to the library of Keith and June Bordell. It's basically a book of critical essays on Jane Austen, and yeah, I think it's going to be kind of interesting to read some more kind of formal opinions of Jane Austen, but a little bit dated, based on a few decades ago. And it's relatively short, so even though the essays themselves are quite dense, they should be pretty comprehensible to me, because I've read enough Jane Austen that I don't think they're going to be saying anything that's very radical, because I've read Jane Austen and read things about Jane Austen already, so I don't think it should be too dense for me, but it is at least short, so, you know. I might try and read an essay every day or something like that. That's optimistic. And then the final 2 prompts are about watching. So you have to watch a direct-to-screen adaptation and a modern adaptation. So I do this thing at the moment where I bought a really cheap exercise bike during COVID, and I do an hour of exercise whilst I watch an hour of a program. So I'm going to be watching anything that's adapted into hour-long segments, really. So that's probably going to be the 2008 Sense and Sensibility, possibly the 2009 Emma, if I have time, the 1996 Pride and Prejudice. I probably won't watch all of them because there's only so much exercise I do. And then in the evenings, I'm going to try and persuade my husband, who's normally very, very accommodating for Jane Austen July. Last year, we watched hundreds of Jane Austen things, including the very slow and dull 1980 adaptation of Mansfield Park, which is the most faithful direct-to-screen adaptation available, but it is slow. I might rewatch the 1996 Mansfield Park and the 2008 Mansfield Park, both of which are absolute travesties when it comes to describing the story. But yeah, I think just to put Mansfield Park into the context of seeing those different adaptations, I suppose. And for the modern adaptation, I'm thinking of Modern Persuasion, which came out last year, which sets Persuasion into kind of like the business world. I think she's like a fashion representative. It looks absolutely naff, but I think it might be quite funny in how bad it is. So that's my aim. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to Jane Austen July. The other thing that they've produced for this year is a Jane Austen July bingo. My printer did not do justice to the quality of this picture. Where you have to cross off each thing as it comes along. I don't know whether I'm being a bit generous, but I've crossed off 6 things in the first 2 chapters of Mansfield Park, but I've crossed them with 1 line, so when they appear again I'm going to do a double line so that, I'm not cheating too much, because 3 people get married, so there's got to be a proposal of marriage, right? But we don't get like word for word the proposals, so you could say I'm being generous. But yeah, let me know what you think the rules are for this, and also can I count things that happen in my Jane Austen contemporary novel or my Jane Austen retelling? Is that how it works, or does it have to be in the actual Jane Austen works? Who knows? If you know a little bit more about the rules, please let me know. I might have just not paid enough attention to the announcement videos, in fairness. Yeah, and I've rambled for a little bit too long now, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you're going to enjoy this month as much as I am, and I hope there will actually be losing the ability to speak here. I hope there will actually be some videos this month. Okay, take care.